Welcome. This is Leading with Spirit, the show that gives you an in-depth look at topics like what it takes to navigate your spiritual journey, how to heal yourself and grow your spiritual gifts, and balanced practices to expand your business and your spiritual leadership. I'm your host, Spirit Bird, shamanic teacher, healer, and author, here to guide you on your journey to becoming your most potent spiritual leader. Hey, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Spirit Bird. Just want to drop a quick reminder that our live event, Next Level Healer, is starting next week. This is a half-day workshop on September 7th. So if you want to learn about the 4 core permission blocks of the healer's path and how to move through them, send me a DM and I can give you more information. But today, I'm really excited to invite a really lovely guest and also our very first guest on the show. So double excitement. I want to welcome Carina Alencar today. Carina is a feminine embodiment guide and an erotic rewilding artist. And she helps creatives secretly leading a passionless life, reconnect with their bodies and ignite their desires and reclaim their dreams. And Carina really has a lot of beautiful magic up her sleeves and works both through leading mysteries of the body and sex through performance and through ceremony and also through one-on-one support. And so welcome, Carina.
Thank you for having me. So good to be here.
Also, you can tell that Carina has a lot of bubbliness and happiness. So she's a really great joy to work with. And I actually was just recently in her container. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that. But yes, first, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, how you got started in this work. I know you have a background as a performance artist, and you shared that you were working through some grief and maybe some societal taming. How did that go from that to leading into the work you're doing now?
So it's really interesting. It was really started with motherhood. Mm-hmm. So I was already pretty spiritual, but I was very much in the Brazilian Spiritism community. And when I got pregnant, I came to the US and was like totally thrown through a loop of like, oh my God, my body, I'm birthing a child, like what's happening? Who am I? How am I supposed to do this? This is really hard. Like, what did I get myself into? It led me to seek out more feminine support because I had come up in this very feminist, queer sort of movement where a lot of the discourse was around empowerment and sovereignty and androgyny almost. Like, I want to like distance myself from what makes me biologically a woman and I don't want to have kids. I don't want to have to, this or that, like fulfill the traditional roles. But then when it came to having a child, it was like, wait, now what do I do? Like, I felt like I didn't have enough like reference points for how to do this in a way that, felt remotely like good and supportive to me. Like just like I didn't want to reproduce what was handed down to me, right? Or like, the problematic parts, I guess. And like whatever didn't align, right? For me. And I didn't have any other reference. And so I kind of delved into divine feminine movement. And I was receiving like ancestral messages. It's like the simplest way of putting it. I was like, oh shit. Okay. I do have support. They're here with me, you know, and so I was like, well, you know, what is this? Like, is my intuition opening up in a new way? I didn't really see myself as like a medium or channeler at the time.
Sure.
And so I needed guidance. And that's kind of where I ended up in these more, women's circles, feminine embodiment, guides who led me, down that path. So.
Beautiful. And fascinating.
Yeah.
So I'll share, I know I've shared some of this with you, but I don't know if I've shared the whole story really. So I recently joined one of your programs, and side note plug, it's amazing. And also side note plug, one of the greatest joys I've been finding recently of doing this work is really being able to work with a lot of different people and be able to like share our medicine and our magic with one another. Even when things look like they're sort of similar, they're just not. Everybody's so unique that you gain so much from being in somebody else's container. And so I'm really appreciating that. So what happened was, I think maybe like sometime last fall, I sort of started getting this like ping that I was ready to do some more like embodiment work. And up until then, a lot of my embodiment work was still sort of in the like energetic field, and like there was experience, but there was also a lot of like thinking about it. And there was a way of embodiment as in the practices I use and what I do that I'm really clear on. But there was a whole piece of like embodiment of like, but me though, actually, of like myself that was missing. And I was also like right at the same time that I was looking at moving into this work a little bit more. I was really curious about that intersection of spirituality and sexuality and eroticism and femininity and all of these things. And I could like feel the thread, but this was just the piece with the embodiment work where it was like I could see the thread and I could think about it, but I hadn't actually had an experience with it. And I also was, it's also very much wanted to hide that, which is so interesting. And I run into this a lot with, talking to people, even that are courting, joining my programs, where like the offer that I have, like some of the work that we do, like I help people work through the self-doubt with bringing their healing gifts forward. And a lot of people will say, well, I feel like I'm not ready to do this because I still have so much self-doubt, and you're like, wait, but that's what the thing is for though. And so I went through the same thing myself with like courting your container, because it was like, oh, but I feel like I should know this. But it's like, this is what it's for,
Totally.
So, and I love the piece with like offering our work, in a way that's really aligned, because like, I remember thinking this and being like, putting that intention out as like, okay, I'm looking for someone to hold me through this process. And I remember like peeking around a little bit online at like different programs, and nothing really stuck out to me or clicked. And then like a month or two later, you started leaking this beautiful offer. And I was like, boom, that.
Yes.
And then I went through like also the normal things, which was like, but like, is this a responsible thing for me to do right now? And like, is this like, maybe I should try something else or do something else? And I was like, holy crap, stop. Like, you specifically just asked spirit for this. And now you're sitting here being like, blocking it, being like, no.
Typical.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, this is a gift. And I'm so, and I love sort of the behind the scenes of this too, because I feel like a lot of this is both in like your ability to listen to what, your guidance and your alignment, and also move through the work of offering, stuff that might feel kind of vulnerable. and also our personal, our individual call or ask or desire, you know, like having that intention and how those two connected. Really fascinating part of this work. I know.
Yeah, I love when these synchronicities happen. And yeah, I just want to name that you and I were in a container with like shamanic training a few years back, and had sort of reconnected a little bit, you know, a few months ago. And I was always watching you and oh, she's doing such cool work. I love it. I love seeing her grow her business, you know. It's so funny when you kind of like, you know, like watch people online and you just kind of keep in touch, and you just never know when you're going to reconnect again. Right. And it was such a like joy. And like, when I saw your name and you're like, I'm signing up. I'm like, oh my God, you're like my ideal client. Freaking soulmate client. This is awesome. Because I already knew you, you know? Yeah. So good. So good. Yeah. So I'm so grateful that you heard the call and you felt it and you said yes. And I mean, and that's really what a lot of the work that I do in Nectar, this particular container, is about, like learning to hear that energetic pull, right?
Yeah.
And trust it, and to trust our body. Yeah.
Yep. So, yes, the divine feminine and embodiment and the body and sexuality and eroticism, all of this is a pretty vast topic. And I'd love to hear from you a little bit about the intersection of spirituality and sexuality and eroticism.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was already kind of like really into sex positive things. And I did burlesque for a while. This was, you know, years before I kind of got into this more new age, new earth, spiritual movement, where all these things are, you know, all these different lineages are overlapping, right? You know, at first I was focusing more on developing my intuition, as I mentioned, because that was kind of what was opening up for me. And then, but there was this like, the experience I was going through, having an unplanned pregnancy and then becoming a single mom. And it just made me reflect so much on like my body and like how did I value or not value? What were the boundaries that I had? Like, what, you know, why things happened the way they did. And so this was like a major sort of reframing that was happening for me around my sexuality and my specific experience. Right. And I was feeling like, oh, I thought I was liberated. I thought I was, you know, playing with the big boys, like, you know, and like having all these experiences and being very adventurous with my body. Yeah. And I could see how there was a lot of crash and burn kind of behaviors, where I was, you know, trying to sterilize some of my experiences and tell this story of like, well, I was just, you know, having fun and I'm just doing this or doing that. But I wasn't really honoring myself.
Sure.
Right. And I wasn't really clear on, okay, what's important to me? How do I treat this vessel? You know, who do I let into this vessel? How does that exchange look? Am I being conscious, intentional, like all those things, right? And so that kind of led me into more of this world of Tantra, of sexual shamanism, of just wanting to heal those specific wounds and traumas and experiences. And yeah. And I realized that I had always kind of had this calling around sexual healing specifically, because I'd worked in different organizations, like even as a teenager, college student. But it was kind of, because I'm an actress, I was always so focused on theater,
right.
And like on art, like I'm an art. This is how I identify. I'm an artist. I'm making, creative work in the world. And, the artist community that is more open sexually, right? And people relate, and there's more alternative kinds of relating happening. And, so I feel like, there was a propensity to end up where I've ended up. Looking back, I'm like, oh yeah.
Right.
And what happened was I got an invitation to perform at like a tantric play container. And I was supposed to do a burlesque dance, but I didn't have time to develop a routine. And so I just came up with this interactive performance art piece with a mermaid character. And it was like such a hit. And people were like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this. This is amazing. Where are you doing this? And I'm like, here. I just, you can invite me to do it somewhere else. Like, please, invite me, right? And so it was just this like, oh, there's something here for me, and I'm having a gift in like showing people how to connect in this way to their body and their arousal. But it's like coming from a heart-centered place and with this like different degree of consciousness and like holiness, right? And wholeness. Yeah. And I just got so passionate about sharing that more. And I jumped into like tantric facilitator training and specifically like somatic experiencing. Because what I felt was really important is that when we go into this work, there's so much trauma, and it's, I'm not even talking about, having, traumatic sexual experiences, right. Directly, but just the layers of patriarchal culture that we have to kind of like sift through to like really get to what's underneath that and like what is us and what is, like why this is, those lower chakras are so shut down, right? Right. And why it's so hard to access it. And so a lot of stuff comes up. And so I just wanted to be able to hold space in this really safe way and to be able to steward people in a gentle kind of unfolding, and that's what the feminine path is as well, right? Is that things are, that we're really listening, right? Versus pushing. Yeah. And we're responding versus reacting. So it's like, okay, creating these spaces for people to just give themselves permission to reconnect with that underneath all those layers. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you really demonstrate that beautifully. And I've been so grateful to be held through this journey with you in this way. I'm so curious. So obviously this is also for a lot of people, this is like a kind of an edgy topic or subject, right? And so it's one thing to jump into it or learn about it. And then it's another thing to be so forward facing and offering it. Was that hard for you?
Yeah, no, definitely. It was a challenge. It took me a while. I mean, it took me, just like you named the people that are kind of first coming into sharing their healing gifts in general, right? Like I kind of went through that. I had before I really got into sacred sexuality, I was trying to offer like intuitive readings and energetic healing sessions, and it felt like something was missing for me on one hand, and on the other hand, there was just like a lot of resistance and fear and hesitation, and like, oh, everyone's gonna know I'm woo now, like I'm out of the woo closet. I do Reiki, like the other day I was in the park and this woman, oh yeah, like Reiki, is that what it's called? Like you can get like that thing done. They don't even touch you. And I was like, wow.
the gateway drug.
This is real. Yeah. I was like, this is real. Like it's spreading. It's what's the word? Diffusing into the masses now. This is amazing. But yeah, like I feel like the sexuality part is still even more on the margin, right? Yeah. And even like you were saying, before I was really in these containers, so much of like the embodiment discourse was about, like bringing your higher self in and like, how you can then use that to manifest and like, right. And it was so, it was very detached for me. It was like very abstract. I'm like, we're talking about the body, but we're still kind of just like here in the energy body, embodiment. The word body is in there, and it's like, we're supposed to bring the soul into here now, like 3D matter.
Yep.
Yeah. And what does that look like? Right. What is that? So for me, it was just like a process of getting over my initial resistance. And it kind of helps that I had already tried to do a spiritual business and, like intuitive coaching kind of thing. Because now I was like, all right, but this is the real thing. This is my real calling. This is where I really shine. And I just feel that like impulse, that drive so much more than I was trying to do the other stuff. And it was just, it just became this thing that I couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yep.
And I just got to do it. And I had to have a conversation with my mother. That was like the key point for me, was like, my mother is going to freak out. She's going to get so triggered. And I mean, like, I didn't really care about other people getting triggered. Yeah, relatives,
right.
Whatever, brother, sister, father. It was like my mom, if I need her to be on board somehow, or to just like prepare her. And when I was able to have that conversation and explain, like, Mom, this is a reclaiming, like because of the work that you've done as a woman, I am now in this place where I can do this, and I can be at this level of reclamation and like conscious liberation. And I need to share this, and I need to model it, and people need to see me, in this work, walking this talk. And, and I'm still kind of like on this edge of like how much of my erotic art is out there. And do I want to just keep doing live performance, or do I want to branch out into more like photography and video and stuff like that? Because that's then, registered. And there's like all this, I'm a mom. Oh no. Like, will this be like circulating, and what happens with that? And how do I, this is like a movement, that I'm part of. And I just try to lean into community and to like people like you who are like, oh my gosh, like you really opened this up for me. This is really like a game changer, and I just see how I'm like transforming people's lives. And so that's just like the affirmation, like, okay, I can't let that stop me.
Right. Well, I love really the wisdom to see even the piece with your mom, that like that energetic thread could be a way of sort of withholding. So it's like, well, I don't know what she might think or how she might react or that kind of thing. And so instead of going direct to her to have that conversation, a lot of us would then just try to like continue to sort of like hide it. So I think that was really perceptive of you and a really beautiful way to approach it also. You brought him up, and I was also going to ask about that, about how the experience has been bringing this work forward with your son and being, a single mom and dealing with all of the ordinary life stuff, and really being able to bring your work forward.
Yeah, it's definitely, it hasn't been easy. Honestly, it's taken me years. Mm-hmm. It's taken me years to, because, it was like, okay to kind of do it part-time, like a one-on-one session here, a workshop there. Oh, I'm being invited to perform at a festival, and kind of like, yeah, I got to get a brand together. Oh, this could be really good to generate income for me. I need to get serious about it. Go professional. I got to go pro, and like, trying to apply like digital marketing stuff I had learned. I was a social media manager earlier on. And it's really hard. My son is on the autism spectrum. He demands a lot of attention. He's just shy of his 8-year-old birthday. And, but actually sort of reclaiming my rights to develop, like deepen my own path has actually made me a better mother. And learning to be even more present in my body allows me to be more present with him, and when I am like, on top of my routine and practices, my spiritual practices, I'm able to show up so much more fully and give to him even more. Right. And at the same time, when you're trying to like launch a business, it's like all consuming, right? It's like so many parts, when you're trying to be a solopreneur, and it's like, okay, I can't really hire out much yet.
Right.
But, and you're trying to get the business coaching in, and it's a lot to juggle, but I just stayed the course, and I just was like, all right, I'm going to chip away at this one step at a time, and just start small and build. And that's what raising a child is like too, right? You don't know what you're doing at first, and you're trying to figure out, what the fuck am I doing? And then you start listening to all the parenting podcasts and reading all the books and then you're like, okay, I just got to like trust myself and my intuition and find my way. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's what I've been trying to do with my business as well. It's like doing it in a way that it fits around my life as a mom. Mm-hmm. And so that I can just like sustain it, Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let it support your life instead of making your life about supporting the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And asking for support too, mm-hmm. right? Like getting support from others and mm-hmm. Whether it's with childcare, when I have to go lead a women's circle locally or, I have these conversations with my co-parent all the time. Like I have my priestess training that weekend. You gotta hold it down. 3 nights. No, he's very cooperative, luckily. So yeah, I feel really blessed. It's just, it's hard when you don't have like extended family around. Sure. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like people have been so, emotionally supportive and enthusiastic about what I'm putting out there that it just feels really good. And it's really encouraging. So Yeah, I hope to expand more. In the fall, I'm going to launch like a deep dive container that's a little bit more extended, and I'm really excited about that because that's going to be, nectar's kind of like the initial invitation, right? And it's like get your feet wet, learn all these how I weave these processes together. Yeah, and then the next one, it's called Sorceress. And it's really learning to kind of like take that and apply it to co-creating your life, like, in a very embodied way.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Ooh, sounds very exciting. Just one more question that came to mind as you were sharing that and thinking back to what you're sharing earlier with the I have to do this, or I can't not do it. And I wonder if you could describe how that felt in your body.
Love this question. This is my language. Yeah, it's like, for me, it was like a welling of the heart, and this very like a grounded feeling. Like I felt like the earth underneath me being like, we got you, girl. This is what you're here for, like that, this sort of like very anchored and like open chest, which feels really vulnerable, right? But it was just like we need to circulate this out, and a sense of like all the people that I will touch, with this work. Like they're here waiting in this field, and they're kind of like searching. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, oh shit, they're already there.
Mm-hmm. That was me. I was like, please.
There and like
person that can help me with this.
Yes. Yeah, and it's amazing because it's once I had that realization, then it became like a turn on. Mm-hmm. It was like, then I'm feeling my root and sacral be like, oh yeah, like this is not like big overwhelming, like, oh, it's like, oh, this is exciting. Ooh, like, can you imagine all the electricity that's going to happen here? Like, connecting with people and watching them open up and watching them have the ahas and, like being that conduit, that support for them to have that experience. Like, this is like, boom, and to me, that's what, the new earth is about. It's really the new human, mm-hmm. And the new human is actually just like stripping back to like original human. Yeah. It's not becoming this like extra super special thing. It's like, oh, we're already like, and that's also the feminine path. It's like, I am already all of this, mm-hmm. right? It is all here. It is all within. The answers that I'm searching for are within me. And my body is the oracle. Yeah. My mm-hmm. body holds everything. And so like the fact that even like, like the mainstream spirituality neglects the body, like that's also like this, that has that function, that shutdown function, in there. It's very sneaky. Yeah. It's so sneaky. It's like, oh my God, when we are trying to dismantle that like the oppressive, patriarchal old world paradigm, mm-hmm. we have to include the body. We have to include sexuality. Mm-hmm. you know, like that to me is like the cutting edge. That's what's going to like really change things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, I definitely second that. Mm-hmm. Just the piece of, the approach, like you were naming earlier, with trying to sort of like reach out and bring in versus reveal what's already there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's tricky. I mean, it is a place where, with the rhetoric and upbringing, a lot of us want to hide that part of ourselves. So I like the call of being able to do this in community, and reconnect to that part of ourselves in community.
Yeah, it's funny. I pulled a card before the interview, and it was the otter card. And it was like, you are not alone. You're never alone, you know? And like that, I was like, oh, because it's so much about community. Totally. Yeah.
Well, beautiful.
Supporting each other through it. Yeah.
So if folks want to learn more about you and your work and your offers, how can they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
So I'm most active on Facebook and Instagram. You can find me at carina.sorceress. Sorceress is spelled as source, like SOURCESS, sorceress. Yeah. And my website is carinaalencar.com, and you can sign up for my free offer, Selva, which is really just goodies that I send out to my email list, and you get a free emotional release embodiment practice series. And yeah.
Beautiful.
So
yep. And I love
you can always DM me. Like I love getting DMs from people and connecting and chatting. I'm a connector. So yeah, I just love having conversations with people.
Well, I'll certainly share the links and the exact information in the show notes here. So if you're curious, you can look there as well to get the direct connections. Yeah. And
beautiful.
Feel in here a second. If there's anything else. I wonder if there's any words that you feel called to share to folks that might be curious about playing in this area.
Yeah, I think if you're feeling the call already, if you're like feeling that curiosity, and it's often going to be like accompanied by judgment, like, and yeah, the ego's going to pipe in right away, like, oh, you don't need to do that. Or like, that's a side thing, you can get to that later. Or often people come to it because they're having relationship issues, and that's when they want to pay attention to intimacy and sexuality. And yeah, so I just want to call people into like, what would it feel like for you to reconnect with yourself and to feel your vital life force energy at service to you and your body and your how you show up in the world, in relationship, not in relationship, in romantic relationship, in any relationship, but first the relationship with you, with yourself. And like, imagine if that was strengthened and deepened and opened up, how much more, of you could be like revealed, uncovered, unleashed. And yeah, so that's kind of like, what I would call people to consider the power and potency that is available to you already within yourself. Yeah, I don't think any any other layers of magic and I don't know, whatever gifts, if like this is not this like it's not strong, what can we really, what impact can we really have in the world?
Yeah. And strategy too. There's like a wanting to, in the same way that many go kind of externally for like, how can I show up in a different way or be better or look better or be stronger in this or that. A lot of us do the same thing with like business strategies of like, oh, maybe if I just learn this tactic or this technique or this strategy, then I'll be good. And if it's not connected and dropped down, then
right.
There'll be a lot more spinning of the wheels. So beautiful.
Totally.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. It's such a joy to be in your presence. And I can't say enough how grateful I've been for guidance along this part of my journey.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for you too. And it's such a joy to be here.
And just a reminder, you can find her at carina@alencar.com or send a DM and check our show notes to get the details of how you can get in touch with her. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Welcome to today's Member Query episode, where we explore questions about spiritual paths, intuitive gifts, growing a spiritual business, and shamanism. Do you have a question for us? Send us a DM at Holton Healing Arts. This question for today is from one of our Instagram listeners. And the question is, a lot of the clients that I work for want to get help with money. And I feel weird about how to tie shamanic healing in with doing money healing work. How can I use shamanism to help my clients with money? A large part of being able to really be a strong shamanic guide for someone else is it's not just about what can I do for this healing thing right now? Or can I like help them feel their heart? Or can I help retrieve this past part? Actually, for like to be a more developed guide, you have to have an understanding of where you are as an individual on your own cycle. And also have an understanding of where they are in their cycle. Because when you're working with others, sometimes you're going to be in the same place. And sometimes you'll be in opposite places or on opposite cycles. And so it's important to know where you are so you can point them in the direction and not assume that they need the same thing that you need, right? You need to be aware of what cycle they're on so you can give them the medicine for that cycle versus giving everybody the same medicine or the same dosage for something when it's not the same wound or not the same curriculum that they're on. And sometimes, most of the time I can tell where I am on my cycle. And sometimes I need somebody to tell me, sometimes I need that outside perspective for me to understand what's happening and where I am. And we will all need this at some point, probably, more regularly than not. So again, just to illustrate this, you might have cycles around something like money. And one way that cycle could go is maybe you were born with a lot of wealth. And that's how you held your value. And then life is taking you on a journey where maybe it's stripping you from the wealth or giving you humbling experiences and is shifting you from using wealth to manipulate or maybe using wealth for your sense of safety into learning how to actually just be generous, right? And to give without needing something in return. If you're working on a business practice, you will probably also be, if you're an entrepreneur in general, then a lot of your curriculum through this life is learning about risk and power and money, right? And trust. And so if you're on an opposite cycle with money, right? Maybe you actually are learning to actually exchange your work for money. Or maybe you're learning to raise your prices. And then you go around the wheel and you get comfortable and you raise your prices again, And then maybe from there, you have to learn how to be really boundaried with your time. Because as your practice grows, more people will want and require your time and attention, which is obviously a good thing. It's a gift. And you can't be everything for everybody. And it also doesn't serve for you to be everything for everybody, or to, charge less than what you actually want, which creates some resentment or some bitterness, which is not good to have in your practice, right? So maybe as you're learning, you get to a point where there's always an exchange required if you're talking to somebody. And again, I just want to interject here that this is part of that old story that spiritual people, if they're true shamans or truly spiritual, that they would just help other people, or that if you're really genuine, that you only do it because you love to do it. And we forget that there's more to it than that, that we're not actually doing it just for the money, that money creates a container and agreement. It creates an agreement that you as the client will actually show up and try and work. It creates the agreement that you don't get an escape hatch, a back door for you to slip out of, so that you don't have to show up for the commitment, for the thing you say you want, right? And we just have to remember that we are all people. And it's not only is it our time and our energy, and not only is our time and energy important for ourselves, for us to be able to do the work that we do, but it's also important for the clients that you're working with. And for your clients to actually receive what they want, sometimes they also have to give in return. And the belief that because somebody is a spiritual teacher or guide or healer, has information that's spiritual, and therefore it just belongs to everybody. And because it's spiritual, you should just be giving it away, is a pretty entitled belief, that you have something that's spiritual and therefore you should just give it to me, is very entitled. So, so you might be on the part of the cycle where you're learning to have really strong boundaries around that. And then you continue on your cycle, and maybe that looks like you work with fewer people, but more intimately. Or maybe it looks like you move from working with individuals to groups, right? And again, this work is what people forget until they've done this work formally with others, with an exchange, is that this is not just us talking for an hour. When you enter an agreement or relationship with me, I'm going to be dreaming about you. I'm going to be tracking the field for you. I'm going to be tracking the cycles for you. So this is a 24/7, arrangement for me as a practitioner, right? So anyway, maybe you get really boundaried and nobody talks to you without an exchange, right? There's no outside of monetary exchange. And then maybe after you've done that for a while, you realize, actually, now what serves, I've been through that cycle, and now what serves is for me to have some balance, where there are some things that people get for free because it brings me joy. But I can't go there and skip over the middle. I can't just go from no money exchange to doing it because it brings me joy and skip the whole cycle that's in the middle, right? And then let's say I continue around the cycle, and then I begin to offer things for free in general. Maybe you might end up all the way on the other side of the circle, and at some point you don't actually exchange at all anymore, right? So that's kind of an elaborate example of, you got to know where your people are. Because if they're in a spot where they've been very boundaried about their money, and now they're being invited to move into a cycle where they are being asked to loosen up a little bit around it and find the joy in what they're doing again, then you're going to need to deliver that medicine. And conversely, if they're in a place where they're actually hiding from themselves, like when they're actually not showing up for themselves and doing sort of lesser work than what they're made to do, and using that they're only doing it for the joy of it as an excuse to not show up for themselves, and because of a wound from money or a wound from being wrong or not wanting to fail, that's a very different cycle to be on, and they need very different medicine than the first person. Okay. And so we also need to know how to apply this medicine to ourselves, what cycle we're in. Have you been hearing the call to expand your spiritual gifts and step into your next level of conscious leadership? If you're a coach, healer, or a spiritual leader, you can learn more about Shaman School and growing your spiritual business on our website, HoltonHealingArts.com, or send me a DM at Holton Healing Arts. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Leading with Spirit. If you did, please share the link for this episode with your biggest takeaway, tagging me at Holton Healing Arts. It would also support me if you subscribed and left a rating and review of the show so we can support more people living their highest purpose. Until next time, journey on.